Anyway, I'll tell you more weird stuff about my dealings with women, so maybe you might understand why I feel like I do and why I don't want to get too heavily involved with a woman. I can talk about the weather and superficial things like that with women, but I'm not looking to... I don't even really want to make friends with women at this point. I just really don't like women very much. I'm physically attracted to them. But you can't build any kind of a real relationship, either a friendship or a romantic relationship, on the basis of physical attraction. The fact that you like tits and ass isn't enough to have a relationship, with somebody. And it's not fair to them either. It wouldn't be fair to me, I wouldn't be fair to myself if I went down that road, and I wouldn't be fair to the woman either. Because even though women are, in my opinion, mentally ill, and mentally deficient in many ways, and I don't particularly care for them as people, I really don't want to put a woman in a position where she's with somebody who feels the way I do about women, either. So, basically what's happened is they've said for years that I'm not good enough, and I'm finally agreeing. I'm saying, great, I'm not good enough, and thank God for that, because you're all crazy. Anyway, I'll get on to the story here. This friend that had freaked out at me over the story about the cat, that my landlady's cat from when I was a kid, that had passed away, and then she didn't want to bury it because even though it was decomposing, she didn't believe it was dead. I'm guessing she eventually buried it, but anyway, this girl, she had 3 children in all. She had 2 boys and a girl. The girl was the oldest of them, but the last child she had was a little boy. And I remember going into the hospital to visit her and the little boy when he was born. And they had the little boy in a bassinet there in the room with her. And I remember I noticed that he was jaundiced. He was quite yellow. And that's not an uncommon thing for a newborn baby. So I told her, I said, he's jaundiced. I said, but don't worry, they'll likely take care of that. They should take care of that before you leave the hospital. Now, I don't know how they missed it, because I'm a nobody with no education to speak of, and I spotted it as soon as I looked at the kid. I knew he was jaundiced. So how they missed it, I don't know, but they did. They sent the child home with her in that state. Well, a week after they went home from the hospital, I showed up at her house, and I could hear that kid screaming and crying. When I got out of my car outside her house, I could hear the kid in the house screaming and crying. And so I go in the house, and she's walking around with this baby in her arms, and he's orange, and he's all swelled up, and he's just writhing in agony. And she's telling me he's been like that for 3 days. And I said, get him to the hospital. He has jaundice. I said, his liver is shutting down. That's why this is happening. Get him to the hospital. Oh, no, I don't need to do that. He said, yes, you do. You need to get him to the hospital. It was on a Friday I showed up there. She says, well, if he's still not good on Monday, then I'll take him. I said, he'll be dead on Monday. Get him to the hospital. She wouldn't do it. So finally I said, look, it's like this. Either you take him to the hospital, or I'm taking him out of here and putting him in my car, and I'm taking him to the hospital. And when I get there with him, they're going to ask me who I am and why I have him, and I'm going to tell them. I'm going to tell them that his mother wouldn't do the proper thing and take him to the hospital when he was in this state. And she says, well, if you do that, I'll charge you with abduction. And I said, you go right ahead and do that. I might end up in jail, but it'll be worth it because I'll have saved the child's life. I said, this baby's going to die if you don't get him to the hospital. So she agreed to take him to the hospital because she knew I'd do what I said I'd do. I don't make idle threats. And she had seen me in action before, so she knew if I said I'd do it, I'd do it. And I followed her into town. I followed her to the hospital to make sure she took him. Well, I was out there a week or so after that, and he was home from the hospital. And she told me that the doctor had told her another 4 hours and he'd have died. you know. Anyway, the thing with the flower planters, she wanted me to build, you have to watch the previous video to know what that's about. She wanted me to build flower planters out of the rotten wood. I wouldn't do it. I wouldn't do it for two reasons. For one thing, you can't build anything with rotten wood. It just doesn't work. You know, rotten wood is just like trying to nourish yourself with rotten food, or trying to work with rusted metal or whatever. Once a thing gets to a certain point, there's nothing you can do with it. It's beyond being serviceable or useful. And that's how this wood was. And the other reason is that she was a con artist, and I didn't want her owing me money. Because I knew how that went. I had had her owe me money before, and I